Now that we have a recipe item in the database, let's make it so we can actually build the screen in our Flutterflow application to add a recipe to the app or create a recipe. Before we get to this, we do need to build this bottom screen so the user is able to click this add button to be navigated to this page. We're going to go down here to settings and click navbar and app bar. We are going to say that there is no app bar actually, but we're going to choose this show navbar button. We get this thing that says it needs at least 2 pages to have show on navbar set, so we can go ahead and do that. Right now we have 3 pages. One page that should have it is our home page, so if we click on this, we can just click show navbar, and I'm also going to go ahead and create a blank page. We have this profile page that also needs the navbar, so I'm just going to call it that, leave it blank for now, and then click show navbar. Now we can go back down here and we can actually add in our navbar. We can choose different options. We have the Google navbar, a floating navbar, and then Flutterflow's default one. I'm going to just choose the default one. And then we have a couple things we want in our navbar. First up is our home page icon, which we have here. Next is profile page, and then the third one is this create recipe page. Now we also have these different icons associated, but we really want this profile to show a more profile icon like this. So how do we actually change these icons? Well, if I go back here and scroll down, we had clicked show on navbar, but there are actually a couple more settings down here. One is the label, this is called profile, and then the second is the navbar icon, and we just want it to be this little person. We can have the actions, we can have the icon size stay as is. So now our navbar looks like this, but we also want one more page on this, which is going to be our create recipe page. I'm going to go back here and create another page. This is just going to be a blank page called create recipe, and I'm going to add it. On this one, I want to show a navbar as well. This will be create recipe. We aren't showing the labels anyway. This is just going to be our plus sign. And that looks good. I want to reorder them a little bit, so I'm going to go down here to settings and we can reorder. We see that change reflected here. You can make some more changes like changing the color, etc. and you can play around with it. You can also choose to show the labels for all of them, but personally I just like it clean like so. What Flutterflow does with this navbar is it automatically adds navigation. If you wanted this navbar to be a little more specific, there are videos and ways to do that, but right now we're just going to follow their basic navbar design. It might not look the best, but we know it works and it's just easy, so we can focus on the actual functionality instead of nitpicky things like designs, even though this navbar looks significantly better than this navbar. So now we kind of have a skeleton to start building our create recipe page. I'm going to go through this very fast because we should have a lot of experience building responsively by this point. Up here we have just a huge column. We have a bar up here for navigation with one arrow on the side. I'm actually not going to include this. We have another container over here which is a column with a piece of text, and then image. This is actually an input, so you want them to be able to upload an image. Under that, you have 3 inputs, one for name, one for description, and one for the link. Then you have another input to put in the time, and then one to put in the serving. At the very bottom, you have one simple button to save the recipe. Let's build this. I'm going to start by adding 24 pixels of padding on our column, as well as 16 pixels in between each item. Then I'm going to drag in a container and then an icon into that container. If we go back to our widget tree, this container is going to stretch the entire way, have no height requirements, and then just be our primary background white color. It's also going to have a child alignment of this top corner, so our icon goes there. This icon is going to be our back arrow and just have a simple action called navigate back. Under this, we're going to have another container. This is going to make up the bulk of our form. I'm going to let it stretch the entire way and make it our white color. Now we're going to do one thing that's slightly different in building this. We're going to add something called a form validation widget. We could have used this for sign up and login as well, but that was just very basic. Now we can do something slightly more advanced by including this. This is going to allow us to do some special things, which I'll show you shortly. But aside from dragging this in, we're just going to build this like normal. The first thing we need is some text and then image under it. This text is going to read create recipe in 20 pixels semi-bold font. I'm going to click back on this column. This one is going to be scrollable and have 8 pixels of gap spacing in between each item. This container is going to have no min height, so I'm just going to let it stretch the entire way. This image is going to stretch the entire horizontal space. Now under this we need some inputs. So I'm actually going to go to our login page and just copy this input because we had previously made it look nice. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy 5 of them in there. Now we need to name them up here, so the first one is going to be name, but then we also need to change the label value over here to name. This one as well is going to be description. Under that we can do link. Under that is serving size. And then the last one will be cook time. Perfect. Now we also want to go back to our login page and then copy this button in and paste it as well. It comes with some actions, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Now we can see what that form validator does. I'm going to click on it, scroll all the way down, and we see this validation. When I click on one of these, it shows us this thing called field is required. What this essentially does is checks if this input is empty or not and just stores that information. It doesn't do anything with it, it just stores it. I'm going to click that for all of these because all of these are required fields per se. I also want to click on link and do something a little special. Instead of just making sure that it exists or not, I'm also going to make sure that it's a website. And then say not a valid link. Link if it's not. This will just make sure that they're actually uploading something that is a link. In addition, we want serving size to be a series of numbers so we can make the keyboard type a number, which is more helpful on phones. And then also put the filter as digits as well. These are just some things in place that help make sure that users are putting in the information that we want. One thing, I'm going to go in this column and then make it left aligned because I want create recipe to be flush to the left side like this. So now we have all of these inputs, but we're missing a place for them to be able to upload an image. This image up here is actually going to serve as our upload button. Let me show you how. When we click on this image, we're going to go over here and add an action. This is going to be called upload data under the utilities, and we're just going to choose upload media, which has to do with images and photos. We're going to choose Firebase, and it's very important that we choose that because it's going to allow us to eventually attach this to the recipe object. I'm going to choose gallery because that allows us to test it out on our laptop, and only choose allow photo. Then I'm just going to name this recipe image. And that's it. So now we have an action. So when they click on this on tap, they're going to be prompted to upload an image. But we also want to display that over here. I'm going to click on the image again, scroll down here, and then copy this path. Then I'm going to click on this dynamic symbol, go down to widget state, and choose this uploaded file URL. What this is going to do is when they upload the file, it's going to be displayed over here. But until then, what happens? It's just going to be a blank screen. In order to change that, I'm going to click on this and give it a default variable value. So when nothing's uploaded, what is it going to look like? I'm just going to paste in this random image, but you can make this whatever you want. Be creative with it. You can make it an upload image, or it can be an empty plate, etc. And I'm just going to click confirm. Now, one last thing before we actually add in the workflow is back on our form, we now have this other option to validate this image upload data. Just make sure that something's uploaded. And I selected that. Now we can add the workflow. This is going to be called create instead of sign in, and I'm going to click to add the action. So we have the experience adding stuff in the database through the data manager, and then also helping people sign in, which is essentially adding a user to the database. This is embodying the same principles, but slightly different. We're going to go down here to backend/database, choose Firestore, and then choose create document. This is going to allow us to create something of type recipe. Now that we have allotted the space to create something of type recipe, we have to set the different fields in this object to actually make it a unique recipe. I'm going to click on this add field as many times as it'll let me to add all of the possible fields that we have on a recipe item. Now I'm just going to start mapping these to the inputs that we had previously made. First up, name is going to be from that text field. For example, name is going to be from that text field. So I'm going to choose from variable, go down to widget state, and then choose this name text input. I'm going to do that for most of these. Cook time, servings, description, date, link, and then lastly, image. Instead of choosing from variable, what we want to do is choose the uploaded photo /video, and it'll automatically assign the photo that we uploaded to this recipe. Now, there are three things that we didn't do here: date created, created by, and saved, because they're slightly different. So let's do them now. First up is date created. We just want this to be the current date and time so we can gauge the recency of a given recipe. We want this to be from variable as well. We're just going to go down to global properties and choose the current time. Next up is created by. This is obviously created by whatever user is currently logged in, and we can retrieve this information through authenticated user. We just want to choose their user reference. This is essentially drawing an arrow between this recipe and the logged in user. The last thing we need to do is saved. This is a number of times someone has saved this. So right now, since it's just being created, this is a 0. And that's it. We do want to add another action to be able to navigate to our home page. One last thing, we had set up that form to be able to make sure everything was all fine and well, but there's nowhere that we actually check that. So that's something we need to add in before we go creating an object. I'm just going to add another action, and this is going to be validate form, and it's going to allow us to validate that form that we just created. This is going to be where red flags come up if inputs are empty or wrong. And that's it. Now I'm going to go click run mode and try this out. Let's try this out. I'm going to go down here and click the plus sign. By default, we see this as our image. I can then click on it to upload an image of the recipe. I uploaded an image. Next, we need a name, a description, a link to the recipe, a serving size, and then cook time. Now I can click create right now, but I want to show you what the form validation does. So if I were to leave this cook time empty, we don't see any errors. The moment I try to click create, we see a field, this field is required error. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that back in. Another thing we'll see is over here with the link, if I just type in random numbers and then try to click create, it's going to give us this error saying it's not a valid link. So now I'm forced to type in my valid link. Now that everything looks all good, I can click create, and it's going to create a new recipe over here. Over here we see it just come up randomly in the alignment because it's sorted by number of times it's been saved, which is 0 for all of them, but over here it comes up first because it's the most recent recipe, which is exactly what we want. So in this video we were able to add a create recipe page and then also add stuff to the database, which we see over here. In the next video, we're going to learn how to sort and filter all of these new things that we've created.